In this video, I'm going to show you how I lime wash my fireplace. Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time meeting me, I'm Karley Hall, and I'm a DIYer who loves all types of crafts and DIY home projects. My channel normally focuses around arts and crafts, but we moved to a new home about a year ago, and I've been tackling all sorts of DIY projects around my house. So if you love crafts or you want to follow along as I turn our house into our dream home, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing. I'm no expert when it comes to this kind of stuff, but a few of you mentioned to me that you prefer learning from someone who isn't an expert, and I kind of agree. I learned so much by just jumping in and trying. So in this video, I'll share the things I did that worked for me and what didn't really work. So if you've considered lime washing something, take this as your sign. You can do it even if you've never done it before. I started by really cleaning my fireplace. It was previously painted, so I just wanted to remove any grime and grease, and then I taped it all off. And this was my first time lime washing. So I wish I would have known a few things before starting this project. And while I knew what lime wash was, I didn't know what to expect as far as the texture or really how to apply it. So in case you don't know, lime wash is mostly made up of two ingredients, finely crushed limestone and water. And this gives it a chalky, matte finish, kind of like a chalk paint. But when you peel off the tape, you're cracking that finish. So keep that in mind as we continue on this process. Next, I used lime-proof undercoat from Portola Paints and Glazes to prime my fireplace. Lime wash can be applied directly over raw masonry surfaces like brick, cement, and stucco, but Portola Paints does recommend lime-proof undercoat in most cases to assure color accuracy and adhesion. And they always recommend using this undercoat on previously painted surfaces like my fireplace and for new drywall. I used a brush to paint it on and didn't worry too much about my paint strokes or any brush strokes showing, since lime wash finishes are intended to have a lot of brush strokes and a lot of variation in the color. I used regular strokes to apply the undercoat and ended up going back the next day to do a second coat to ensure the brown paint was completely covered. I originally was going to sand the fireplace to scuff it up just a bit before applying the primer, and I completely spaced when starting this project. I was just so excited to get rid of the brown, and I forgot to sand. I didn't have any issues with adhesion, but I would recommend scuffing up your surface with some 220 grit sandpaper before priming if your projects or walls have a glossy finish like my fireplace did. I used the color Match Point from Portola Paints and Glazes to give my fireplace an earthy gray tone finish. I started by using this boxy staining brush, and it would have worked great on a larger scale project like a wall, but I ended up switching to a smaller paintbrush as you'll see in this video. When the lime wash goes on, it goes on so much darker than the color it will dry to. I was having a little panic attack as I brushed it on, and in person it looked even darker, like 10 times darker than what it ended up being. But I decided to trust the process and just kept going. When you brush it on, it's recommended to apply it in a crosshatch or crow's feet pattern, creating multiple X's as you go along. I had no idea what that meant, so I just started doing little X's over and over, and I tried to vary the direction of the X's so that it looked random. And it was pretty difficult for me to achieve that randomness, but as I worked, it did get easier to brush in the different directions. The main concern that I had about applying the lime wash was that you can't stop midway through your project. You always want to maintain a wet edge, and all that means is that you don't want to brush over a dry spot because it'll be noticeable. So I worked in the same direction and only brushed over areas that were still obviously wet to me and then moved along. So you can see in this time lapse that as I work, the top part of the fireplace is drying much lighter than what it went on as. I know it looks like I did this all in one day since I decided to keep re-wearing my same painting clothes to cut down on laundry, but I did wait for the first coat of lime wash to dry overnight, and then the next morning I added that second coat. The second coat was much easier for me since I had a better idea of what to expect and felt the randomness was actually making sense. That night I added a coat of Portola's clear sealer, and I chose to seal the fireplace for a few reasons. This hearth gets a lot of toddler traffic. It's a track for cars, a place to lay, jump, do performances, and lots of sticky fingers touch it every single day. So if I didn't seal it, I'd wipe off the finish if I tried to clean it. And if you don't seal it, you can't actually clean your lime wash. So if you're using it on a wall, it may not need to be sealed. It has a beautiful, smooth, almost suede-like finish, and I was a little sad to seal over that. It also has its own antimicrobial benefits. So if you don't have little sticky fingers at home, you may be able to skip this step. When I started brushing on the sealer, panic set in again. I wasn't sure it was going to dry lighter or back to the color it was, and I continued to trust the process and brushed it on in the same way that I applied the lime wash. I decided to keep this video in real time so you could see how long the brush strokes took on this first coat, and I could have used my larger boxy brush for this portion, but I chose to continue using the smaller brush to match the brush strokes from before. I also wanted to go back to the painter's tape. I wish I would have pulled off the painter's tape at this step, before I sealed the lime wash. When I peeled off the painter's tape, I ran into a few issues. The first was that it cracked the lime wash finish and just made a mess. I typically peel my painter's tape off while paint is still wet, but I wasn't sure if that would ruin the lime wash, so hindsight, I think it would have worked either way, but I would recommend pulling it off when your project is completely dry before you seal. This way, if it cracks, your limestone won't stick to the sealer and ruin your project. So I just had the vacuum ready to go and vacuumed up all the limestone that flaked off. The second reason I wouldn't recommend doing what I did was the sealer peeled off with the tape. So I wish I would have removed the tape after lime washing and then just cut in using a brush to seal. Instead, I had to use a razor blade to cut along the tape to break the seal between the top coat and the tape so that it didn't peel off all that sealer, and it was such a headache. So to recap, tape your project if you need to, remove the tape after the lime wash dries, vacuum up any lime wash flakes, and then cut into seal and don't use any tape. I ended up adding 2 coats of sealer to the fireplace since it's such a high traffic area. And on the second coat, you can see that the lime wash doesn't change colors anymore and was already pretty protected. Since it didn't absorb like the first coat, the second coat went on way faster. So as a reminder, this is what it looked like before, and here's another look at the after. I love how my fireplace turned out, and the whole project ended up being a lot more doable than I originally anticipated. For some reason, I was really nervous that it wasn't going to just paint on, and while I did have some trouble getting out of my head and achieving that randomness, I ended up getting better as I continued on. So hopefully this video will give you the confidence to tackle a lime washing project if you've been nervous about the process. So let me know, is there a lime washing project that you are contemplating starting, or have you started a project and you just need to finish it? Let me know in the comments what you're working on. Or if you're a lime washing pro and you have feedback or advice for me and the rest of the viewers, let us know. What could I have done differently? What should I do in the future? Let us know. We want to hear from you. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like it. And if you want to see what projects I'm working on next, consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.